So hello everyone and welcome to today's session. My plans fell through. Now what? This session is designed to address some of the issues related to delayed arrival for fall 2021 that some of you may be facing. We know that the last 18 months have been filled with uncertainty, and some of you are still feeling the effects of the pandemic, whether it is related to visa or travel restrictions, or an inability to find remote course offerings. Our goal today is to help you learn about the resources and support available to you so that you can plan your next steps and continue your pathway to reaching your academic and professional goals here at UC San Diego. First, I'd like to take a moment to review UC San Diego's plans for returning to campus this fall. UC San Diego's Return to Learn program began in May of 2020 as a strategic response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our goal of this ongoing initiative is to return to in-person teaching, research, and service in the safest way possible. As a result of consistently low positive COVID-19 rates, UC San Diego has been able to safely increase the number of students on campus each quarter throughout the 2020 to 2021 academic year. And this fall, plans to resume to mostly full on-campus operations. So what does this look like for our students? Vaccination remains one of the most important ways to keep our community healthy, and all who can be vaccinated should do so as soon as possible. As such, it is critical that all individuals comply with the University of California's COVID-19 vaccination program. An overview of the mandate can be found on the Return to Learn website. This means students, faculty, and staff must be fully vaccinated or have applied for an exception or deferral by September 6, 2021. More information on how you can comply with the mandate is online. Next, masking is required indoors, including in classrooms and residence halls, regardless of vaccination status. There are a few specific exceptions, for example, when eating, when alone, indoors, in a closed room, etc. But we rely on modeling to inform our masking policy. Additionally, UC San Diego's housing, dining, and hospitality has been working diligently to provide housing that can provide healthy living spaces for our students. We are acutely aware of the challenges presented to our residential communities by COVID-19, as well as how the pandemic has impacted the off-campus housing market. The Off-Campus Housing Office, or offcampushousing.ucsd.edu, can provide additional resources to support students with their housing search needs. Consistent with UC mandate and campus decision to return to predominantly in-person courses for 2021-22 academic year, nearly all courses have been initially scheduled to be in person. Many departments have added some sections of online courses for the fall due to the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 on students with documented circumstances. For example, those who cannot arrive on campus for the start of fall term due to visa challenges or travel restrictions. We encourage you to contact the Virtual Advising Center, or VAC, for undergraduates, or your department for graduate students to inquire about which courses might be offered remotely. Unfortunately, offering courses in person and remotely does require additional resources, and many instructors simply do not have, and therefore, most courses will be offered in only one modality. With the campus's return to primarily in-person instruction, this means that students will likely need to plan to come to UC San Diego to begin or continue their studies. If you have an initial I-20 or DS 2019, that is, you have an I-20 or DS 2019 with a start date of September 20th, 2021 or later, in order to maintain your F1 or J1 status in the United States, you will need to plan to enroll in at least one in-person or hybrid class at UC San Diego. If you have an I-20 start date of September 20, 2021 or later and do not have any in-person or hybrid classes this fall, that is, you are only taking online courses this fall, you must remain outside the US for the duration of fall quarter. Also, you must then apply for an adjusted start date to your Form I-20 or DS 2019 to reflect the future term that you intend to enter the US, for example, winter 2022. You can do so by submitting a new Admit I-20 or DS 2019 amendment/reprint request. We'll go over this in a moment, but I just wanted to highlight that the ways that you can submit this amendment request is through iPortal. So you can access iPortal both through iportal.ucsd.edu or by going to our website istudents.ucsd.edu and then clicking on Submit a Request and iPortal login. All right, so what about for those of you who have secured in-person classes to come to UC San Diego, but are experiencing travel delays or barriers to getting here this fall? For example, we know students are still experiencing difficulties in getting a timely visa appointment or who are facing issues with extended visa processing times due to what is called administrative processing. Many students are also impacted by the various presidential proclamations that have been issued over the last several months. Please know that ISPO and the campus are here to support you. ISPO has created a visa appointment and travel support letter available for download for every international student via the iPortal or on our website. You can access this by going to istudents.ucsd.edu and clicking on Advising, Traveling, and then Visa Application. This has been helpful for students to secure expedited visa appointments, and it is also very helpful to carry with you when you enter the US in case your travel is delayed beyond September 20th. For those students whose visa have been subject to additional processing called administrative processing, or for those whose visas have been denied, ISPO can also provide support letters to give to you or the embassy directly to help advocate for you and your support your timely visa application approval. Both of these letters can be applied for via the iPortal. Again, you can go to istudents.ucsd.edu, click on Advising, click on Traveling, and then click on Visa Application for more information on how to apply for these letters. One of the biggest questions ISPO receives these days is how late can I arrive this fall? For the vast majority of students, that date is October 8th, and it is at the discretion or permission of your college or department. As you know, UC San Diego operates on the quarter system, meaning each quarter is only 10 weeks long, which is quite short. If students miss more than 2 weeks, most instructors and advisors will say that is too much to catch up on with the rest of the quarter and succeed academically. That is why October 8th, the end of week 2 of the quarter, has been chosen. If you've received permission from your college or department to start classes by this date, then you may attempt entry into the US. We strongly encourage you to print ISPO's Visa and Appointment and Travel Support Letter to present to Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, when you enter, in case they have any questions about your delayed entry. ISPO will not adjust your I-20 or DS 2019 start date, since our Visa Appointment and Travel Support Letter already states that a student's entry will be supported up until October 8th, even with an earlier start date. Some departments, typically at the graduate level only, may allow for entry into the US after October 8th. If this is the case, please contact ISPO if you require an additional support letter to facilitate your entry and have received approval from your graduate department. Please be prepared to show documentation from your department, email correspondence is fine, that says you are allowed to enter after October 8th. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, Gabi Hoffman, to talk about studying remotely.
Some of you, we realize, may be considering staying in your home country for the entirety of fall quarter and taking all online classes at UCSD if you've been able to secure them for a variety of reasons. If you have been able to secure all online classes and wish to stay outside the US for fall 2021, then you will need to take action on your I-20 or DS 2019 record if you have a September 20th, 2021 start date. All right, I really want to stress this, that even if you are taking online classes, you think everything is okay with your document, you don't need to take action, that's not the case. You still need to take action on your record to make sure it is accurate. And the reason for this is that ISPO cannot activate your CVIS record if you are not physically in the US. Therefore, it's important that you request an adjustment to your F1 or J1 record to reflect the quarter that you intend to be here in person. So this might be winter or spring of 2022. You can request this document by, again, going to the iportal.ucsd.edu and completing the new admit I-20 or DS 2019 amendment request. For those of you who are planning on studying remotely this quarter, know that your support system is still here for you at UC San Diego throughout the quarter. So if you're a graduate student, for example, you contact a graduate coordinator of your program. If you're an undergraduate student, familiarize yourself with your college academic advising office. They'll help you navigate making progress during your program, just the way they would if you were here in person. You can also rely on your professors in your classes and faculty in your department. We encourage you to reach out to them, contact them, use those email addresses and reach out. Professors, faculty do love to hear from their students and rely on that communication to really make sure you are reaching your goals and can express any concerns that you might have to your professor as well. Lastly, there are other offices on campus that can help you during the program. Sometimes asking one question, such as, can I study part-time this quarter, will require that you communicate with ISPO, your college or your department, and the office of the registrar. So as you can see, your support system at UC San Diego is made up of various units on campus, and we will all remain accessible as you begin your program remotely. As you engage in virtual communication with campus units, though, do take note of various communication methods. So while ISPO is available through Zoom advising and on a drop-in basis, other campus units may only be available through the Virtual Advising Center or only by email. So just make sure you make a note of this and allow for enough time when you communicate with various campus units so that you leave enough time for your request, can have any of your questions addressed in a timely manner. There are also still a host of programs available virtually to help support you both academically and personally throughout your time this quarter if you are studying remotely. So there's a virtual community building programs from ISPO, and we'll go over some of these at the end of the presentation. There's virtual advising, as I mentioned, also known as the VAC. The VAC is specifically for undergraduate students. We encourage our graduate students to liaise directly with your academic department, more specifically with your graduate coordinator. There's still tutoring and writing support via the Teaching and Learning Commons. There is the Virtual Student Union and their variety of programs they're running online. And then there are still online recreation classes called the Playground. So all these are different areas of campus that we encourage you to explore. You'll be sure to learn more about them either in your department or your college orientations as well. We encourage you to make full use of them while you're studying remotely. So lastly here, I want to talk about deferments because for some of you, we realize that taking classes this fall at UC San Diego may not be an option remotely or in person. And you may be considering deferring or delaying the start of your coursework into a later quarter or into next year. In order to do so, please be sure to follow these instructions depending on your degree level. For undergraduates, it's important that you reach out to admissions if you are considering deferring to a subsequent quarter or year. Undergraduates typically are granted deferment to the following year. Typically, it is not granted within the same academic year, but it is reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So you should make sure that you are reaching out to admissions so they can consider your case. So you can contact admissions at admappeal@ucsd.edu. If permission for your deferment request is granted, you still have to complete ISPO's new admit I-20 or DS 2019 amendment reprint request at the iPortal. The reason again for this is we need to adjust your visa documents to make sure that you can come into the country when you are physically ready to. Before you submit this request to ISPO, you have to have permission from admissions. They should provide you an email message and you can upload that message approving your deferment in the iPortal. Again, email is okay if you get that permission. We will need to see that though in order to adjust your documents accordingly. For graduate students, rather than admissions, you're actually going to contact your department directly. So if you are already in touch with your graduate coordinator, that's great. That is a person you want to be in touch with so that they can get the process started, so you can request a deferment. They can check with the faculty and see if this is okay. Again, if permission is granted, you complete the supposed new admit I-20 or DS 2019 amendment and print request at iportal.ucsd.edu. And again, you can upload that deferment permission from your department, email is okay, to that request. And then we can issue you new documents to enable you to come into the US once you are ready to do so. Please aim to complete this process if you are considering deferment by October 20th, no later than that. So when you're ready to join us in person, we will be ready for you. We want to make sure this is known as well. So look out for orientation programming to help welcome you to campus whenever you do arrive. And I wanted to show you some examples of what is going on with ISPO virtually. If you're starting your program remotely, or even if you're here, we will continue these programs throughout the year. Our iEvents calendar, for example, this is a live calendar that features globally engaged events by student orgs and campus departments throughout the year. Head to ievents.ucsd.edu that Grace has just put in the chat here for the latest events that are posted there. Also, our virtual meetups. So these are happening right now during orientation. We encourage you to join. Virtual meetups are open to those starting their programs remotely or in person and are a great way to meet other international students at UC San Diego. We're offering 2 different kinds of meetups, interest-based and regional. To register for these meetups, head to iorientationucsd.com/meetup, which Grace had very helpfully put in the chat again for all of you to access. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get into questions before our final reminders. So we'll take a look and see, and I'll try to get to as many as we can.
Our first one, I can go ahead and answer. So our first question is, where can I see this recording? So this webinar recording will be available in about 2 weeks' time at iwebinars.ucsd.edu. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat shortly, but be sure to click on webinars for newly admitted students, and it will take you to all webinar recordings during this iOrientation time period. Again, about 2 weeks' time, and you can access this webinar recording. And then, Gabby, we have another question that's come through the chat. So this question reads, can fee deadlines be deferred up until we are certain whether we can attend this quarter?
Sorry, I didn't get the first part. Can fee deadlines, can you clarify?
Correct. Can fee deadlines be deferred up until we are certain whether we can arrive this quarter?
So as far as I'm aware, those fee deadlines cannot be deferred. They're set for the entire campus, and so that's why they unfortunately cannot make exceptions. I would encourage you to contact your department, or if you're an undergraduate student, your college, check in about those fees, but to my knowledge, they do hold to those deadlines. So I know this makes it difficult. Students have to decide, a little bit earlier than they'd like to about what to do next, but you might have to do that with those deadlines in mind.
Thank you, Gabby. All right, so our next question reads, what are the potential problems or drawbacks of starting our program in winter quarter? The delay in my case is due to my F1 visa being held for administrative processing. Or are there any drawbacks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So much of it depends on the program that you're in, your degree level. A lot of my colleagues on campus will say, it can be a little harder in terms of adjusting socially to campus because there are fewer programming opportunities available in the winter quarter. Sometimes, for example, in terms of academics, when you're trying to enter courses that have a sequence to them, you're entering them mid-year. But if you're taking some of those classes online during the fall, that shouldn't be an issue. So some say that those might be some of the drawbacks. However, since we've been going virtual this last year, I know a lot of campus partners have been making efforts to continue programming efforts throughout the academic year to really help students find a community, on campus, meet other students. I know ISPO certainly will be holding programming to help students adjust. But those are generally some of the concerns is course sequence and adjustment. Sometimes housing, that's something you have to consider. If you have a housing contract on campus, it can be sometimes a little bit more difficult to secure housing for the middle of the year for winter. And so just something you'd want to check in on with housing as well.
Thank you so much. And actually, speaking of housing, our next question reads, will I have to reapply for housing on campus if I arrive for winter 2022 or winter quarter?
So we would recommend you contact housing directly. I know they have a slightly different process in place this year compared to what they had last year. My understanding is I believe you do have to reapply for housing for winter, but I don't want to say that and give you incorrect information. Their policies have changed. So if you head to hdh.ucsd.edu, they have a really great FAQ section there specifically related to the pandemic and issues related to travel delays and arrival delays. They can give you clarity on whether you have to reapply or not.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Our next question reads, I will take fully online courses this year and come to the United States in December. When can or should I begin to apply for my I-20?
It's an excellent question. So as a general rule, when students are planning to enter the United States on an initial I-20, you can only enter up to 30 days before that start date that is listed on your I-20. So if you're taking fully remote courses, for example, for all of fall quarter, and you plan to start your in-person classes in the winter, first, I would say apply for your visa documents as soon as possible. We know that consulates and embassies have, reopened and are issuing visas very quickly, but there could be unforeseen delays. We know students are still experiencing long wait times. So you can apply for that, if you know now, you can apply for that now if you want to, an amendment request or a new request for your I-20. But again, be aware, for example, if you're starting in the winter, you'll be getting a January 3rd start date. You can only enter the US as early as December 2nd, okay? So 30 days. So it seems to work with your plans, which is good, but just be aware of that. But I urge you to request it as soon as possible.
Wonderful. All right, our next question reads, what would happen if one does not get a visa to enter the US for an in-person winter quarter after enrolling and studying online for fall quarter?
Yeah, good question. We hope sincerely that is not the case, but if that is, we encourage you to talk to your college if you're an undergraduate student or your department if you're a graduate student about options moving forward. We don't know what winter is going to look like yet, what online options may or may not be available. So it's better to keep in close contact with them and they can advise on options. And then based on the advice that they give, you can contact us so we can adjust your visa documents accordingly if we need to.
Wonderful. Okay, so our next question is, do I need a support letter if I am coming after September 20th, but before September 23rd?
No, well, I would say bring the support letter that we provided to all of our students on our website that was referenced earlier, just in case. If you're arriving after September 20th and by October 8th, definitely bring the letter with you. If it's a very small window between the 20th and 23rd, even if it's a day after, we would say bring that support letter just in case. We never know. Sometimes Customs and Border Protection will ask additional questions of students. So it's just sort of extra security to have that letter. Just to clarify, it is accessible via the iPortal. So when you log in, it's actually on the very first page when you log into the iPortal. You don't even have to submit a request for it. It's available for download right there. So you can do that, or you can go to the webpage that I referenced earlier on our travel and visa section and just download the letter there as well.
Thank you, Gabby. All right, our next question reads, how long does administrative processes take in general for an F1 visa?
Question. Several years ago, they used to take anywhere between 6 and 8 weeks. Sometimes less than that. Sometimes 30 days. It really depends on the student's case. More often than not, as we've over the last, I would say, year or so, we've seen them take longer. And I don't want to scare students and say it's definitely going to be a long, long process, but do be prepared for a long wait just in case. And again, I wish I could give you an answer that's definitive or that's typical, but we've not seen typical cases in the last 18 months, unfortunately. So just keep us up to date, keep your department or college up to date so we can make adjustments if we need to, and support you through the process.
All right, so our next question reads, when would we be graduating on a 4-year plan if we start studies in winter quarter?
It's an excellent question for your academic advisor. So to give you an idea on your I-20 document, we typically give students a cushion of an extra year on their I-20. You'll notice the end date is if you're an undergraduate student, we will have given you a 5-year I-20, not a 4-year I-20. That's just to give you an extra cushion if you need an extra quarter or two, or maybe you need that full extra year. Most students, international students, finish in fewer years than this. But if you want to know kind of the timeline for finishing your degree, if you're starting winter instead of fall, you should consult with your academic advisor who can go through your academic plan and kind of give you a better idea. Just do want to note, if you finish your program earlier than the end date on your I-20, that is your official end date, not the end date on your I-20. So some students think, oh, I have a 2025 end date, but I finished my program in June of 2024. I can still stay here for another year. That is not the case. You always have to pay attention to the quarter in which you actually graduated. That last day of the quarter is your actual end date, and you'll need to apply for future benefits if you want to stay in the United States. That's covered in another orientation or presentation. It's also covered in our I-Triton orientation, but I did just want to make that really clear to students.
Thank you, Gabby. All right, so our next question reads, what would happen if we pay fees for fall quarter but cannot attend due to visa delays?
So this is, again, a very tricky situation that we know is difficult for our students. If you want to avoid paying any fees whatsoever, you would have to withdraw before the quarter begins. Once the term begins, you are only able to be refunded a certain percentage as time goes on. Okay, so we recommend, again, that you stay in close contact with your department or college to find out what would be most beneficial for you. If you don't want to lose any money at all, it might be most beneficial to withdraw beforehand, kind of get ahead of things. We do completely understand wanting to wait as long as possible to get that visa approval. It does, and unfortunately, carry the risk of losing some money in fees. But do stay in touch with your college department so you can get clarity on what those fees are and how much you would owe.
All right, so that seems to be the majority of our questions for now. I'll go over a few final reminders to allow for just 1 or 2 more minutes for our students to submit those questions. So I recommend if you do have some last burning questions, this is your chance to submit those before we close the session. But before we say goodbye, a few reminders. So you can continue to register for other orientation sessions by visiting iorientationucsd.com to register for other sessions. At the end of the session, you will receive a survey. So this survey is really important because this is how we confirm your attendance. So as you all know, you have a 2 minimum session requirement for international orientation. So to make sure that you get counted as this session as one of your sessions, you make sure to go ahead and fill out that survey. We also really pay attention to these surveys to let us know how we can better serve you. And lastly, just want to remind folks to visit iupdates.ucsd.edu for the most up-to-date information from ISPO. You'll also get announcements from our weekly newsletter, You can attend our Zoom in advising hours. And then we're also very active on social media. So if you follow us at ispo.ucsd, you'll get some updates there. And I can see a couple last minute questions have come in, so well done. We'll definitely make sure to highlight those. One question that came in that I'll answer right now is where can I find the survey link? So actually the web browser that you use to open this webinar session, once we end the session, will automatically refresh, and it will refresh with the survey link. So make sure to keep that web browser open. It will have that survey link. And then additionally, you'll get an email tomorrow with the survey link as well as like a friendly reminder. So if you miss it today, you can get it tomorrow. And if for any reason you have some issues accessing the survey link, feel free to email iprograms@ucsd.edu. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat for everyone. And we'll be sure to make sure that you can access the survey that way. All right, a few more questions have come in. So, Gabi, our first question is, how long does the process of deferring to the next quarter take?
Yeah, so it is dependent, again, on what degree level you're in. If it's a graduate student, it depends on the department, right? Some departments are larger than others, have to go through additional steps, internal processes that other departments might not have for their students. So it's very, very dependent on your degree level, which department you're in. For undergraduate students, I know they're trying to process these as quickly as possible because I know students have to make plans. I don't know the exact time frame. But if you know you want to defer, I would suggest making that request as soon as possible.
Thank you, Gabi. All right, our next question reads, I already have my I-20, but due to visa delays, I cannot arrive on time. In iPortal, should I submit the new I-20 request or the new I-20 amendment request?
Good question, and so glad you asked, because this is a point of confusion for a lot of students, understandably. So if you already have an I-20, then you are submitting the I-20 amendment request, not a new one. If you were to submit a new one, that would produce a whole new I-20 with a new CBIS ID, and you don't want that. So if you're just delaying your start to come into the United States, it is the amendment request that you complete.
Wonderful. All right, so this question says, according to the slide, is it possible to arrive at UC San Diego later than October 8th, for some exceptions, such as approval from our department or faculty advisor? And if that is true, should we adjust our visa document at that time?
Actually, I'm going to go back to that slide because I think it'll be helpful for everyone to kind of have those links as well. So let's just take a look here. Okay, so this is the slide that we were talking about, that October 8th deadline. So some graduate departments, I could not tell you which departments, unfortunately. It is very department specific. Some graduate departments might allow a later entry. It really depends on the structure of their program and how they feel that they can deliver their programs remotely. They might allow a later entry, but if that's the case, you would have to contact, and you are given permission, I should say, then you can contact inewstudent@ucsd.edu. What we can do is we can provide you both a support letter, and if we feel that is late enough of an arrival date that you would need an adjusted I-20, we can provide that for you as well. These are pretty rare cases, I have to say, but if it does happen to be that you can get this approval and your department is allowing it, we can accommodate it. You just need to email us so that we can work on your case individually.
Great, thanks so much. All right, our next question reads, for those starting our program in winter quarter, how will it affect any chance of doing internships or CPT in the summer? Would there be some exceptions possible as the delay is due to visa processing?
That's, I know, a really popular question. I know our students, when they get here, they, need to start planning their following summer as soon as possible. And so we are very aware that CPT in particular, OPT, these benefits that are associated with having an active CBIS record for one full academic year are of concern to our students. Unfortunately, the regulation is clarified by the Student Exchange Visitor Program and remains that you must have a SEVIS active record. That means you have arrived in the United States and we have activated it for 3 quarters, so 1 full academic year before you can take part in CPT or OPT. Unfortunately, they are not granting exceptions for delays caused by visas, issuance or things that are outside the student's control. They are still sticking to that rule. So if you're not able to physically arrive in the United States until the winter, and we are not able to activate your record until the winter, the earliest you could do CPT is after fall quarter of 2022. Or if you enroll full time in both summer sessions, we could consider that a quarter. And then you could do CPT during the fall quarter, so after summer of 2022. We do have an employment session that goes over working in the United States, whether you are in or outside the US. I would definitely recommend that you attend or watch the recording if you're not able to, because it does go over this in more depth.
Thank you. All right, so our next question reads, do I have to attend another visa interview if I defer to next quarter?
So this question has come up a lot, and I think it's really due to conflicting information that we are seeing between Customs and Border Protection and the Department of State. So official guidance from the Department of State says that if you already have a valid visa, let's say that you applied, you intended to come in the fall with your fall I-20, but you needed to defer, that visa is still valid and it should still be able to be used with your winter adjusted document. We saw that in the case of last year. This worked for students as well, but sometimes Customs and Border Protection, those are the officials at the border who ultimately decide your entry into the US, have a difference of opinion or policy and feel that we need to update it. We recommend contacting your local US consulate or embassy to verify that you can use the visa that you were issued alongside your I-20 that was adjusted. Again, the way we see it is that it is valid for use based on Department of State guidance. However, we are encouraging students to check just to be on the safe side due to inconsistent guidance that we've been hearing.
Thank you, Gabby. All right, our next question is, my visa processing, I think it's processed for 26 days since they applied for the visa. The student is unsure whether to defer to next quarter or to pay fall quarter fees. Where can the student get some advice on this matter? They think there's a chance that they'll get their visa by October 8th, but they're not sure and would like to talk to someone.
We recommend that you email inewstudent@ucsd.edu. That's the email address on the screen. So that email address is specifically for our new students coming in or attempting to come in for this fall, so that we can set up an appointment to talk to you about your options and timing. We know it's so difficult with administrative processing and delays. Sometimes there can be hope that it'll be approved right before the quarter is about to begin or within that time frame. But sometimes not, and you have to make that decision with paying fees, and we know there's a lot going on. So definitely email so we can set up an appointment to talk to an advisor through your options.
All right, so that completes our submitted questions that we have gone through. Oh, one more just came in. So actually, that's a good reminder. Now I think we will wrap up our webinar in the next few minutes. So if you do have that one last burning question, I encourage you to submit it now. So Gabby, our last question, or one of them, reads, as off-campus internships are not allowed after starting the program in winter quarter, would we be allowed to do an internship in companies which have their labs and or offices on campus?
So if you are taking part in any type of work that is on campus, that means it has an affiliation to UC San Diego. Perhaps that PI, maybe it's a business, but that that the individual who works there or your supervisor who works at that company also has an affiliation to UC San Diego. Usually that can be considered on-campus work. And for on-campus, you do not need to seek work authorization. As an F1 student, as soon as your record is validated or is registered and activated, you can begin working on campus without authorization. So it might be allowed. We would have to look at your case specifically because we've seen some of these requests before with companies that have affiliations with UCSD. We just want to make sure they're affiliated so that we can authorize it, but it might be an option for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. So again, if for some reason a question comes up that maybe you didn't get the chance to ask at this webinar, feel free to contact us via icontact.ucsd.edu. And as well as if you have any questions, we have that email address, inewstudent@ucsd.edu, specifically for our incoming students. So Gabby, we've had a couple more questions just come in, and I'm wondering, do you have a few minutes to answer these questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. So we have one question that says, since I'm staying in my country this quarter, I guess I can continue working as I study. Is this correct or no?
The last part of the question got cut off. I apologize. They're asking if they could still continue working as
they study.
Oh, well, it depends. I don't know if you're working in the U.S. Working at a U.S.-based site. So some students, had an on-campus TA-ship or GSR, or if you're working in your home country, that's unclear. If you're talking about working on campus, but remotely, so, as a reader, TA, what have you, we encourage you to talk to your department about this. There are certain tax laws, both in your country and here, that you need to be aware of. There might be certain restrictions with that in mind. So we encourage you to talk to your department, and they can work with the graduate division on making sure that everything is legal, everything is okay for you to continue that work.
Wonderful. Okay, and yes, they just clarified that they're working in their home country currently.
Oh, okay, yes. If you're working in your home country, that should not be an issue. That doesn't impact your F1 status.
All right. So again, feel free to email us at inewstudent@ucsd.edu or fill out our contact form at icontact.ucsd.edu. But overall, we want to say thank you for attending today's session. We understand that a lot of our students, because of COVID-19 and the various travel changes that have come with that, are in a lot of flux and limbo, and we want to do our best to support you. We're so excited that you are a part of our Triton community and that you're joining UC San Diego. So we hope that today's webinar was helpful. And on behalf of the International Students and Programs Office, we hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. Have a great rest of fall quarter, and see you all at our next session. Thank you.